Security, Google plus Hangout, hosted by the IEEE Computer Society. And today we're going to talk about the 10 scariest security threats we face, one of which is being able to even pronounce that. And this Hangout is set up as a teaser for our upcoming conference coming to you in a couple of weeks. We're going to be in Austin on September 24th. Our conference is the Rockstars of Cybersecurity, sponsored by the IEEE Computer Society. And actually, though the conference itself is 24th, we're starting on the 19th and 20th with a hackathon. We'll give you a brief overview of the hackathon at the end of the Hangout, but as a tease, I understand there's a quadricopter involved. So that should hopefully keep you hanging on until the end of the show here. And I want to remind you, as attendees today, you are receiving a 25% off registration on your registration for the Rockstars of Cybersecurity conference in Austin. And we will email a promo code to you at the end of the broadcast as well. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're talking about cybersecurity. In case you hadn't noticed, pretty much every day there's an article about something that's happening, a new breach in security, whether it's a consumer or retail breach, governments are getting hit, corporations, non-governmental entities, and those are the ones that we know about. If there's money, IP, identity, compromising pictures of celebrities sitting on a server somewhere, it's a target and someone's out there to get it. And there's more, and this is where things I think get really exciting. We've got smart devices. We've got sort of smart devices. We've got smart devices that want to be smart but aren't smart enough, and they're being targeted as well. The Internet of Things is growing in scope. We're opening billions, literally billions of devices to more opportunities for theft and espionage, sabotage, terrorism. We've got power grids, we've got aviation networks, communications of all kinds, commercial aircraft, and don't get me started about Malaysia Flight 377. That's a whole hangout of its own. But if you're not the least bit worried, then you're just not paying attention. So with that happy, upbeat perspective, we're going to start the process of dissecting the level of cyber threat that we have today and try to understand a little bit about what we can do about it. And again, we're going to take it up here for a little bit in this hangout, and then we hope to see you on the 24th in Austin. So let's get started. Who are we? Well, we got a great panelist, a couple panelists to join me today. Our first panelist, coming to us from an undisclosed location deep in the heart of Texas, is William Hurley, known to his friends and the Federal Witness Protection Program as Hurley. Welcome, Hurley.
Thanks, Josh.
And Hurley is co-founder of Chaotic Moon Studios, an open source advocate, systems theorist. He's received lots of honors and awards. He's very modest. He hates it when people talk about that stuff. He doesn't even talk about it himself, but he's a pretty cool guy. He founded the Bar Camp Austin in 2006, connected to South by Southwest, did an iPhone dev camp. He's done a lot of cool stuff. He's got a lot of chops in this regard. He's got a great collection of toys in the background there as well. Welcome again. Our second panelist, hiding in plain sight as the Senior Director of Mobile and Product Security at Visa, is Sarath Geethakumar. And boy, does he got some chops in this space as well. He specializes in mobile platform and application security. He's involved in mobile security research. It's a long resume full of really cool stuff about finding management solutions for mobile security, platform security capabilities. He authored Hacking Exposed Mobile, which has got to be amazing. He's an active member and contributor of the Open Web Application Security Project, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, yes, I love this. Former Red Team member at American Express. I got it. That sounds really cool. Who am I? I'm Josh Greenbaum. I'm the moderator. I'm an enterprise software expert, consultant, analyst. I follow everything in the enterprise software space. Security keeps creeping up as one of the things I'm obviously really involved in. And I'm also here representing the victim class of people who have been harassed and otherwise tormented through this cybersecurity threat. So what we did to get started, and I want to get started with you folks on this, is we asked the folks who signed up today for our Hangout to give us their top 10 cybersecurity threats, and particularly those that they think happened this year. And I want to go through them. I'm going to sort of list them in order. and then I'd like to have a discussion a little bit about that, and then move on to our next topic. So, number one on the list is of what do you think are the top 10 scariest security threats this year? Number one was attacks against cryptocurrency exchanges. Okay, number two is ransomware. Number three was retail data breaches. I think we can talk about that endlessly. Number four, vulnerabilities in home networks. Tied, looks like, for 5 and 6 is government spying and massive Russian hacker database attack. I missed mobile malware. That's actually looks like a number 4. Airplane communications system flaws and vulnerabilities in USBs came in at the bottom there. Interesting list. I'll confess, the first one I was amazed. Cryptocurrency exchanges. I thought that was sort of a interesting thing to read about in the business page. But apparently it's not. Who wants to take a first crack at that one? Let's discuss that a little bit. And how big a threat is that today? What's coming down the road?
Well, I'll take a crack at that, Josh. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. If you think about security from the defensive standpoint, what you really should be thinking about is how much money and time and effort do you want to put to thwart an attack, because eventually all things can be broken, right? And so if you then reverse that mindset and you think of it from the side of an attacker, a young fledgling infrastructure with cryptocurrency that has value that people don't understand, so on and so forth, it makes a lot of sense to me that would be near the top of the target list. Most of those things probably don't have the amount of security they could have, and there's certainly a lot of interest in not just Bitcoin and Dogecoin and that, but all of these things. And actually, here in Austin, we have 2 Bitcoin ATMs. So in theory, that makes sense that you would attack it, create an account, and go to the ATM and actually take out cash for that. So there's some, I think that makes sense. I don't think it's the top on my list, and I was very surprised that it was the top on the survey. But I do think that it makes sense, both because the cryptocurrency still being in somewhat of an infancy, and because there's actual monetary value there. Obviously, there's going to be people who want to try to attack and thwart those systems for financial gain.
So something we should worry about now, or maybe worrying about it later. Sarath, what do you think?
Well, I think I'm in total agreement with what Bill was just describing. I mean, it's indeed a great area of research and interest for both security folks as well as the general public. In a couple of years, we might be seeing Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency being a more widely adopted standard. But if you're talking about the most or more imminent threats that I, as a consumer, should be worried about, I think cryptocurrency is a little way ahead of its time to be considered a very imminent or absolute threat. So definitely cryptography and viability and feasibility of adopting it as a standard is an area of interest, but probably potentially today, I don't think we are going to see any kind of economic breakdown or a mass end user breach from a Bitcoin perspective to be considering it as an imminent threat. That's my view.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting to me. Again, I took this question and we had a little exchange beforehand, and I was like, what's up with this? This weekend I was hanging out with some friends, and the usual, what are you doing these days? What startup are you working with? And a friend of mine said, I'm working on I'm working with a new startup, and we are essentially setting up a reward system based on a gamification model that your rewards are some kind of online currency. So I asked him right away, so what are you doing about that? And he said, that's a big question for us. So maybe to Hurley's comment, this is something that's coming down the road. Let's probably, if I were a career hacker, I may be looking at is this the next thing I get to play with? Let's go. I want to go down the list, and we don't necessarily have to stay on all 10 of them. But I thought ransomware was another really interesting one. Let's talk about ransomware a little. I've certainly encountered it. I know enough about my Windows machine that I could reset myself back to a previous start point and get rid of it. But what else what does that mean? What does ransomware do for us as consumers, and what does it mean in the larger sense of both the social and kind of the economic impact of ransomware?
Well, I mean, I would imagine that the ransomware, would affect enterprises and other companies more than individuals. Not that it couldn't, but think of it in relation to essentially piracy, the actual pirates, and how that's always worked, right? So, I mean, you have, Somali pirates that will go out and capture a ship and hold that for ransom. You have unbelievably large amounts of commerce flowing across all of these networks that we participate in today. You have things that run event centers and SCADA systems and so on and so forth. So I think this is getting more attention these days, but I mean, this is not a new problem by any leap of the imagination. If you have somebody who you can take their infrastructure hostage or take their client data hostage or whatever, and they're willing to pay you, well, then there'll be other people that are willing to pay you too, because in some of these cases, what they're paying is a rounding error accounting-wise, and for the attacker, it's potentially hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. For the company, it's there's hundreds of millions of dollars flowing across the system. Of course, we would pay $10 or $20 million and make the problem go away. I think we're going to have to look at things like the pirating off of the coast of Africa, Somalia, all of those things, and really look at how those problems have been dealt with and how that's affected the situation as we start really looking at more and more of this becoming, I think, more commonplace.
Sarath, where does it sit from your perspective? I mean, this is, first of all, is ransomware today is a PC problem primarily, at least my experience. Is it a mobile issue coming down the road? And also, as a member of the Visa security team, there's a payment problem here. If I'm going to demand ransom, I got to get paid. Do you know how that ransom flows? What can we do to prevent or at least head off this flow of ransom payments through the global system and maybe cut off the source of money from these pirates to begin with?
I mean, that's a very loaded question, Josh. I mean, I don't think I'm going to talk about Visa or the policy, but from a consumer perspective, as a security researcher, definitely ransomware is a major threat. I guess I'm having a little bit of echo problem. You guys facing it?
No, keep going. We'll pretend it's going away any minute now.
All right. So, well, the problem, moreover, is agreed. I mean, we are facing a challenge with ransomware and people's PCs and computers getting infected, their lives worth of work, data being taken hostage for money and payment. But as a consumer, I am more concerned, or I'm more worried about the avenues that I use to distribute and get these ransomware installed. Tying it back to what Will was telling, taking advantage of all these sites which have drive-by downloads or which have weak application security being leveraged as a platform for distribution of malware and phishing is more of a concern. When I'm talking to, when I talk to someone who doesn't know much about computers or malwares or how things are distributed, basically what they tell me is, how can I know when I go to a website that there is a malware hosted on it? If I knew it, I would have done something or the other as a consumer to ensure security of my system and my data. I mean, and you had a very valid point, Josh. I mean, tying it to the mobile security. As a security researcher and as an end user myself, I am starting to get more worried about security of my data, which is beyond my reach today, right? That ties it back to the cloud and the mobile, the iCloud backup issue that was recently exposed, and issues with a lot of many other cloud hosting solutions as well. So the point is, I as a consumer no longer have the ability to analyze, understand, or protect the data I want to, and I leave it all to, I trust Apple or Google or any entity that is that has agreed to protect my data, and I'm putting it all in the cloud. And that is what I think, from my perspective, is going to be a growing trend for data hijacking, ransomware, malware, and so forth.
I can't resist. I have to ask, should we be trusting Apple and Google and Microsoft and anybody else with this, or as individual consumers or as individual corporate entities, should we be looking for a way to take greater control over the data in some way, whether that's through through the kind of interactions we have with these companies or through some third-party methodology? How do we deal with that? I mean, should it be I'll trust you the way we all were trusting our government until we discovered what the NSA was up to?
Yeah, I mean, excellent question, right? I mean, there's absolutely no way for us to assertively say what any of these entities are doing. And as an end user or as a corporate entity who uses cloud or mobile infrastructure, we have to ask the question about what is the risk associated with this, from a third-party risk perspective, and how are we going to address it. Like Will was mentioning a few minutes before, it all stems back to how can you eliminate the root cause? How did we handle the Somalia pirate situation, right? So cloud is inevitable.
We actually haven't handled the Somali pirate situation. I mean, that's the problem. That we still have piracy.
No, we haven't, but at least efforts are being made to address some of the issues at the root level, rather than trying to address one-off issues. I mean, we can't deal with, every iCloud or Google or Box issue, right? We'll have to systemically address it as a society and as a security community. And, unless we take a step towards that, we're never going to solve it. And to be honest, cloud and mobile, there's no stopping it. The revolution, the technology revolution, as I call it, has already started, and it's evolving, and it's only a matter of fact, few years before you see all enterprises moving into the cloud model, where you're going to have your most special handling or confidential data sitting in cloud storage spaces. So eventually, that standards from how we do with IEEE or SANS or NIST or OWASP, the standards for evaluating or analyzing security posture of these solutions and these hosting, they have to evolve, and there has to be a fair play between the big enterprises who are consuming the data and also providing the services, so that the actual users can be comfortable using those platforms.
You mentioned another one. You keep opening up these great topics, and I want to throw this one to both of you. You mentioned cloud, and you're right. I mean, this is something I follow very closely. Everyone's moving to cloud. You can't be a startup in the Valley building an on-premise application. I tend to take maybe the heretical view that if you're only worried about the cloud and not worried about your own internal IT, then you're just kidding yourself, and that in fact the cloud potentially offers a better security model because you're able to put some real pros on a bigger, more centralized kind of problem than trusting security to a couple, hopefully a couple of smart guys working in your IT department who are going to try to keep you, from getting hacked through your firewall. And now we're bouncing around here, but is cloud as big a threat as we think it is? Is the threat always been there and just looks different?
Oh, let's just stop all the cloud bullshit talk, right? So there's no new magical technology. You're still back to the 1980s problem of, is it in my data center or is it in yours? There's no new way to write code. There's no new, all this BS about it's scalable. Well, if you think it's scalable, call Salesforce or Rackspace or anybody and say, great, I've got this and I want to scale it once you're on there. And they'll say, well, that's going to be a week or 2 weeks, or it takes us 19 days to set it up. And that's because they're just building a data center, just like you. Some marketing idiot saw the cloud in the middle of all of our network diagrams and came up with the genius idea of calling it cloud computing. And while, yeah, we talk about all these new technologies, it doesn't change the way we write the code. It doesn't improve, or it doesn't increase or decrease the amount of security depending on how it's run. These are the same challenges. Where do you want to put your data, and what measures are you prepared to go to protect it? And if you are a company providing services in the cloud, then there's the same security audit questions that have been great for the last 20 years still apply. You still want to know where your part of that system touches another part of the system. And that's weird because they'll say, well, you have a private cloud. Okay, well, that's the same as when you used to go to any of the data providers and have your own rack connected to their backbone infrastructure, right? And so, except the difference is they're managing it, you're not. And so there's a very big question of trust there. But this whole, is the cloud a threat, cloud security, whatever. Look, if you put your personal information on Facebook or Twitter, or you share the photos via Snapchat or any of these other things, you're inherently taking the risk that once you hit click and send, that information no longer belongs to you. It could be taken or stolen or reused or repurposed, like these celebrity photos you're mentioning at the first of the call. And it's really easy to get mad and say, but that's Apple's fault or that's somebody's fault. Well, they didn't take the nude photo of you, and I'm sorry, like, you don't know how.
My photo wasn't there. My photos, photos are not on.
My photo was there, and I have to say it was a pretty good one. I'm proud, but. That's
when you look like. That's when you look just like Brad Pitt. I remember. Yeah.
But the whole point is that we have to start educating people in general society because they don't understand how the internet works. They think that they hit a delete on an email and it's gone forever. Those things aren't gone forever, right? When you're in Google and you go to the trash and you say delete forever, those mails aren't deleted forever. They're out there somewhere. And if in the things that you do that are naked pictures and the emails you send to the ex-girlfriend or the ex-wife and all these things are out there floating somewhere and can be recollected by a smart person. And it's ridiculous to put this on an Apple or anybody else and say, well, it's your fault because you provided me with this tool. That's effectively the same as me buying a sledgehammer and then someone leaving it outside, and someone uses it to bust my window open or my garage door open and steal all my stuff, and I say, well, sledgehammer company, why weren't you watching the sledgehammer you gave me? I mean, it doesn't make sense. The cloud argument is bullshit. It comes back down to standard operational procedures, standard security things, and whenever you give that to someone else, you are taking an inherent risk that they will not be able to be as diligent as you at protecting it.
Well, that's a good point, Bill. I mean, I don't think debating that the root of the issue that we need to address is probably secure software development, secure infrastructure management or security architecture. But largely being a customer or a consumer or an enterprise, what I value the most is the ability and the transparency to be able to use a service and at the same time know that it is secure. I mean, we're not saying that Apple is at fault or Google is at fault. They might be doing everything they can. But one key point that you hit is the risk part. What is a tolerable or acceptable risk level that any entity wants to accept? That's what needs to be defined, right? I mean, sure, there are nude photographs, people posting onto iCloud, well, advertently or inadvertently, right? Either way, it could be nude photographs or it could be my personal photographs with my family, which I don't want to share. In a multi-tenant environment, agreed, 10 years back, we used to have data centers like, or Rackspace or Salesforce, whatever it is. We used to have dedicated systems. We used to have people maintaining it, patching it, writing good applications, building good security infrastructure. All that's gone. With the cloud adoption, what we're trying to say is what's changed is the operational aspects of things. It's not the hardware, it's not the source code, it's not the application. So how do you make sure that the operational aspects of things are right? I mean, if iCloud decided to turn off forgot password questions, what do we do, right? Or if, for example, if your system is not patched, you're running a cloud service and you don't patch your systems frequently, which leads to compromise. It's again an administrative issue which is beyond the users or an enterprise's control at that point. So that is the extra, I believe, the extra risk that is being added to the mix, which drives the panic around cloud. I mean, from my perspective, if I'm an entrepreneur or I'm an executive, C-level executive who's looking at taking my company to the next level and reduce the operational cost and increase the revenue for my shareholders, I'm obviously going to go to cloud, right? I'm looking at going to cloud probably as soon as possible. What is changing for me? My operations team are no longer handling the systems, the infrastructure, the software stack, the middleware probably, and probably there's a change in the IAM deployment architecture too. So how am I going to balance out the risks that are unknown to me, at the same time ensure that I trust the Azure or the Googles or the Dropbox or the whichever entity I'm partnering with to take my company to the success level. So that's where I think I see as a risk is if we do not partner with organizations to support that, as I call it, the cloud explosion that is happening right now, we're going to see more loopholes through which security is going to fall through, and eventually, data is going to be left at the skilled hacker's hand, right? Josh, you got any take?
So, I mean, we've been dancing around this question of risk, and I think I think it's a really interesting one, and partly is I want to sort of have a general question on the table. Is it even possible to really make an intelligent risk assessment of a complex IT or consumer environment? Can we really, can we know enough? Can we as a consumer, can we as a corporate entity really understand risk so that the potential risk, so that we can make the right decision? I mean, who I think that it was the Target breach, came through a third-party vendor. There are breaches that come through products connected to to networks. I did a lot of work in the IoT world last year on security, and I was amazed to see a survey that showed that I think it was 2/3 of a particular vendor's controllers that were obviously in place on shop floors in use by the customers. 2/3 of them were 2 or more revs behind in their operating system, and therefore whatever security upgrades had been patched onto these OSs, there was nothing. They weren't running it. How would that company assess risk? They don't even understand that they have to keep their software up to date. So can we even have an intelligent conversation about how to know what we're at risk for, and maybe make some choices based on that?
Well, see, you bring up a really great point. I mean, the Target breach. So the actual technical fault of the breach is a third-party service vendor. They don't call it third-party service vendor breach in the press, do they? They call it the Target breach. And so, you have that situation, which is the perception of these events, okay? So as a consumer, you say, how does that affect you? So let me tell you how that affects you. It doesn't. If you read Engadget or The Verge or any of these, you are not the average consumer. I'm sorry, that's a fact of life. And we, as kind of the geeks and nerd community, can talk about these things all the time. But if you walked at the front door of a Target and you said, did you know they lost 40 million credit cards? I would be willing to bet 2 out of 10 people might know about it. And if you said, doesn't that scare you about going in and buying stuff and running your credit card? They'd be like, I need shit. I'm going to buy it now with this Visa card. Right? So the fact is
that was a plug for Visa, right?
It would be great. It would be great. Yeah, you owe me $1, sir. But it would be great to have the kind of world in where you're living in, and where consumers were like, I should really think about all of these services, but they don't. They're too worried, in the current economy still, even about paying the rent, paying the electric bill, and can they send the kids to college? And student debt just passed $1 trillion. So student debt is now the second biggest debt next to mortgages. It's past cars and everything else. And these are the problems people are concerned with. And the problem is once they know Target it can happen, why couldn't it happen at Walmart or anywhere else? So what are they? They're just the people who are going to continue to shop, continue to spend the money, and if something happens, hope that it doesn't affect them, or hope that there's some measure of protection that will remedy if it does. And that's horrifying to me, because the fact is you mentioned at the first of this Hangout, with the Internet of Things, with all of these things, there's so many things that are connected, so many more things that are going to be connected, that this is going to be a bigger and bigger problem. Every Samsung TV that I bought in my new house has a webcam on it, right? So it's like, well, it's connected to the internet. It's like, I don't know how I feel about that. Do I trust them to keep that updated? What happens when there's a bunch of pictures of people watching Game of Thrones nude released, and it's all from Samsung TVs? What are you going to do? I mean, the point is that consumers aren't concerned about these, because they're decisions are based on convenience.
Yeah, but shouldn't they? I mean, shouldn't they be concerned? I mean,
Hear me.
Be concerned? I'm concerned. I had my identity stolen this summer.
But you're not the average consumer. Hear me out. Consumers' mentalities, by default, are based on convenience, and security doesn't work well with convenience. It's hard work. It's hard work to keep track of these things, to know what your cards are, to know how many people in the United States have written down all the numbers in their wallet, so if their wallet got stolen or they lost their wallet, they could say, no problem, I know my credit card number, I've got it all in a little safe at home, I can call and cancel all this and do all this. None of them. That's why it's a nightmare when it happens. So you can't go out and look at average Joe or Jane consumer and say, should they be worried about it? Hell yes, they should be scared fucking shitless, but they're not. That's the facts. They don't care because they live in a world, in a society of convenience, and security is hard work. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes vigilance.
I got to throw this over to Visa, because this has got to be your world, right? Security versus convenience. You want people to use your cards and use them easily and well, but it can't be, they can't get blown out of the water by either an over rigorous security regimen or, for that matter, an over successful cybersecurity threat. How do you look at this, Sarath?
Well, I mean, totally agree with everything that Will said, right? I mean, more than someone who works for Visa, I mean, I'm a regular user of products from Target and Home Depot. I mean, I've been buying, for the past 3 months, quite a bit of stuff from Home Depot for my new house. So, end of the day, the question comes to, should I stop buying things? Do I have an alternative? I mean, that's where, tying back to my very initial statement, I am more worried about things which are way beyond my control from a technology perspective than things like Bitcoin or anything else. I want to be able to go to the grocery store. I want to be able to go to the Walmarts or the Safeways. I need to get bread and milk, all right? Can I stop doing that? If I get too paranoid, well, I have to shut down every single point of sale terminal and say, no more buying food for my family, which is not going to be working, right? So end of the day, the goal is, whether or not we are a big shop or a mom-pop shop, end of the day, what is the security that an institution which is accepting a user's credit card, their identity, their personal information, what is the level of security they're providing to the end consumer? I mean, this is every C-level executive's nightmare today, right? And Josh, going back to your initial question about what is an accepted or tolerable level of risk, I mean, yes, Target was breached, because an HVAC third-party provider who had access to the network had access to way more things that they shouldn't have, or they were actually plugging into their more critical infrastructure. Now, the larger question, it comes down to 3 major things, right? Secure software development, security architecture, and patching and maintenance of your systems. As a C-level executive or as somebody leading the technology or security of a company, you should be thinking, today, what are the 3 key areas I want to invest money in, right? Your expansion strategy is going to change every day based on how technology is evolving, unless you start building things ground up and start considering security part of each of your work streams, development, infrastructure, and architecture, whether it's network or application architecture. Unless you inculcate security into bread and butter into every single thing that you do, you're not going to be able to ever define what is an acceptable risk in your environment, because you don't know what risk you're exposed to, right? So going by that analogy, what I'm saying is, I as a consumer, I don't know how an organization that has access to my credit cards or a shop that has access to my credit cards or personal data have defined their acceptable or tolerable risk level. Even if there's a breach, none of these outlets, retail outlets, are going to shut down the business, and people are still going to.
I need to jump in there and actually, because you mentioned Home Depot, and I want to add to, you had 3 things we have to do. There's a 4th which is process. Yep. And a really good example of process is, I was traveling this summer with my family. I'm sitting in a hotel room in San Diego looking at the beach, thinking we're going to head out. I get a phone call on my cell phone. Are you Josh Greenbaum? Yes. This is Home Depot Security Department. we are verifying whether you are opening up a new line of credit with us and getting a credit card. And I said, hell no, I'm going to the beach. And they said, well, that's good. We've got somebody on our online system trying to start this. We wanted to check in with you. We're gonna cancel it. We're gonna get rid of it, and it'll never, it'll go away. I said, great, do that. I hung up the phone, or hang up is wrong. It's I pressed end of the call, and I sat there thinking, okay, I subscribe to Experian Triple Alert. That's supposed to be my consumer protection for this kind of thing. I wonder how long it's going to take them to let me know this just happened. Sure enough, a day goes by, and I finally that evening went on Triple Alert, looked, and though I have the notification, what I had from them, they don't apparently send out the email notification for 24 hours. It was on the site that this had happened. I wasn't notified. It was only due to the process that Home Depot had that I was notified. In fact, it turns out three other retailers were being approached by this person who had a tremendous amount of my information, a scary amount of my information. None of them tried to proactively contact me. Two of them opened these credit card accounts. One of them put it on hold, and it was only because I saw them myself and acted on my own that I was able to head it off. Point being, if all these systems exist, but if the processes, whether it's Experian that takes 24 hours to send you a notification, or everybody but Home Depot that sort of watches these things happening and thinks, yeah, why not? Until we add process to that mix, we're going to be stuck in. We've got the right technology. We know we can watch these things. We just don't know what to do with them. Hurley, you want to?
Yeah, but you're under the illusion that you have any privacy with any of that data. I mean.
Oh, you were Scott McNeely. Yes.
No, that guy's insane. But the fact is there's sites like Public Data and Intellis and all these sites where you can go on and for a nominal fee, I can find out your address and your driver's license and how much you make, and enough that most of these places that outsource to other countries that have people who make $8, $10, $12 an hour, maybe not even minimum wage, to answer the phone and say, oh, you've lost a card, Josh? No problem. Let me ask you this and these security challenging questions, which are ridiculously easy to thwart. Anybody with any skill in social engineering could do that. It's ridiculous to think, I'm shocked that there's not a million times the identity theft that there is. The only reason there's not is because the people who are doing it aren't that educated, and the only reason it's happening is that the people on the other side aren't that educated either. I mean, you say process, but I would say awareness and education is number one for the consumer mindset. They just don't think about it. They go home at night and they lock all their doors and they check all their windows and they make sure their car is in the garage and it's shut, and they defend themselves. And some of them get pepper spray or tasers or guns or everything. But online, they have no concept of it at all. They don't understand that computer connection out to the internet is an invitation to someone to forward all of those things and come into their house. The fact that they bought a new alarm controlled by their iPhone is an invitation for someone who can hack that to go and unlock their house with that. Like I said, this is a very important moment in history. As we start connecting everything to the internet, we greatly amplify the effects of bad actors on everything infrastructure-wise, whether it be a SCADA system at a nuclear power plant or a water dam or whatever, or an iPhone app that lets you unlock the door to your house for your neighbors. And you see these commercials. I think ADT has one they're running all the time now, where it says, "Oh, look, you can turn on the lights and unlock the house and do all this stuff from your iPhone." Well, guess what? If you can do that, so can about 1 million other people around the world. So, these are things that we don't think about, because why is that important? It's important because it's convenient. It's important, do what? Sarath?
That's a great point, Will. I mean, going back to your point on the home security systems, where, what freaks me out nowadays is every single company that makes a lock for your door to your home security system says, you can unlock your doors, you can turn on your lights, do whatever you want, from the touch of a button on a mobile app. AT&T has some, Comcast, Xfinity provides some. These are some of the big names. And the larger question is, when you start talking to any of these vendors or reps who try to come over to your house, if I ask a question about the security of the system, they start becoming uncomfortable. I'm not blaming them because probably they don't understand any of this because it's too technical for them. But as an average Joe, my question is, how many residents would actually know the security around their home security system? I mean, I was in the market looking for some home security systems or, at least a personal camera at my house so that I can do some monitoring outside my house on the backyard. The larger question is, if I go on asking, do you have anything that you can point me to say that your system is secure? It's like, we use the top technology, so we're secure, right? So as a consumer, as a somebody who's going to the retailer for taking care of my house, my kids when I'm not around, and everything related to personal monitoring and locking my house, how much do I trust any of these vendors? What do we go by, right? In 10 years, if all of the United States is going to move to any kind of home security system that can be easily breached by touch of a button by someone sitting in Eastern Europe or China, how secure are we? I mean, what does it tell about security of each individual who stays in a household in the United States?
Well, I mean, I love this question because I sat down with a security expert at a large appliance manufacturer, who shall remain nameless, who said, you want to know my nightmare scenario? My nightmare scenario is, a very simple. It's a very simple hack. Once we get enough of our ovens and furnaces installed in your house, you could hack 5 houses in the neighborhood, turn the oven and furnace up to maximum, and just burn the neighborhood down. And it's a smart system. So congratulations, you've now become instantly more vulnerable. Okay, so I still want to. Well, a lot of things to talk about here. We're bouncing around here. I don't want to leave without really going into the whole discussion of espionage and not just sort of hacking for the sake of doing something evil or even hacking for the sake of collecting ransom or money, but the espionage side, both again on the industrial espionage as well as the government, unfortunately, the government espionage side of security. I think it's a slightly different case, a slightly different problem set. I'm wondering, do we think of it differently in any way, or really just these are all tied together in this question of convenience versus security, this issue of ignorance and bliss? How do we factor in these other issues of espionage and industrial security into our discussion, gentlemen?
It's a very controversial topic. So, I mean, to give my 2 cents, right? It's definitely an issue. I mean, NSA spying on people living here, yes, it's definitely an issue. But to me, is it an imminent threat? Well, they might be hearing my conversation that I'm having with you, Josh, or with Will, but they're not coming knocking on my door. They're not taking my personal property to do anything bad to me unless I started doing something really bad. So yes, it is an issue for privacy, and I wouldn't want the government snooping in on me or listening to what I say, but I think I'm more concerned about, organized crimes, cyber hackers sitting in Eastern Europe or in China who are ready to take my identity and, just ruin my life with it, however they can. I'm more worried about those kind of eavesdropping probably than what NSA would do. Sure, NSA can hear all they want my conversation, but unless I spurn a national threat, I don't think they're going to come knocking on my door and say, hey, why did you talk about us? Or, why are you guys going to Yosemite National Park? So I agree, it is a threat, and as a nation, yes, we should be worried about cyber threats or what eavesdroppers can do as it relates to the critical infrastructure of our country. But as an individual, though I feel that my privacy is being violated, I don't think it's causing an imminent threat or danger to me today. it could be in future, very well be in future, but I'm more worried about the existential threats that are caused to me by targeted actors who really mean to do harm for making some money rather than an entity doing for the sake of a country's survival or security.
I'm going to guess Hurley has a different opinion.
No. I mean, look. Hey, so great. So most of our infrastructure uses products sold by companies in the U.S. that are made in other countries anyway. So shock. Really? If we're having everything that's being used, you go to a police station, they're using a Linksys or a Cisco router or whatever. You go here, you go there. The majority of these products, and I couldn't venture a guess, but it's at least half, if not 2/3, are made in the same countries you're worried about hacking into them and stuff. So it's like, shock, your stuff got hacked? Well, by the Chinese, I'm surprised since all of your stuff is made in China. Like, I mean, the way we think of security and infrastructure is ridiculous. I mean, we expect things to all be done on the up and up. We don't face the realities of government espionage, government against government, government against people. We don't face the realities of corporate espionage. If you've got the right guy that works at your company and his wife's having a baby or he's having financial problems or the mom's got cancer or whatever, and you give him enough money, he's going to take the laptop or the USB drive and he's going to hand it over to me. Right? And then I'm going to have those secrets. That's how that stuff works. Because the thing that we ignore in security all the time is human nature, which is, and it's the horrible question of, would you kill a baby? And all of us would say, no, absolutely not. And then there's different versions of that in psychology, right? Would you kill a baby if aliens were going to destroy the billions of people on Earth if you did not kill that baby? I mean, if you didn't reconsider, I'd be like, what the hell are you thinking? But that's the problem with security, is that security and risk, we pretend as security experts that this is quantifiable and qualifiable in moments in time, and we don't understand it contextually. It changes within those moments all of the time, which means that an infrastructure that's very secure and penetration tested today hires 20 new employees and 3 of them made a mistake or connected something they shouldn't have, and the next day within 24 hours it's not as secure. Security is a moment-to-moment, every second of every minute of every hour of every day thing that has to be measured and monitored and the risk evaluated and tweaks and changes made. And the threats evolve intra-minute and intra-second. And so it's just ridiculous to talk about things like corporate espionage or government espionage against, again, governments or other people, when it's, I mean, how do you think a lot of the militaries overseas feel when they found out that, well, Boeing makes those jets, but they're in the U.S. and primarily here, and maybe, your jet doesn't have all of the same components, or maybe it has an extra one, just in case our jets face your jets. To think that people haven't thought of these things or put these things through their paces is just to be unbelievably naive.
Which we have decided is the norm. Unbelievably.
Unfortunately so.
But you raised the people side, and I don't want to. Oh, I'm sorry, Sarath. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, spot on. Will has got some great points. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about espionage across, between different countries, cyber warfare, yeah, in future you may not see actual people fighting on the ground. It might be cyber warfare. Yes, he's got a great point. My take is more towards the outcry that people have towards NSA spying or tapping phone calls internally. I totally respect everyone's opinion, and I think it is a great privacy concern, but is that something that is going to cause us, as an individual, a great harm? I probably would differ in opinion, because I think I'm more worried about protecting me and my family's identity as they go shop around for normal things than, probably NSA spying on a phone call where my wife is calling me and asking what type of bread do you want from Safeway, right? So I think it was got a great point with respect to countries and cyber warfare and things like that. I mean, yeah, that's something I don't think industry has addressed today. I mean, recent incidents with China asking for source code reviews from Microsoft and Apple, I mean, that itself opens up a whole slew of issues. It's kind of a retaliation for U.S. having issues with Huawei and their technologies. So we're seeing that more of those concerns are coming to daylight. It's no longer behind closed doors. We start talking about, okay, do they have a backdoor in the technology we bought from the United States? Or do we have a backdoor in the Apple iPhone that was made and manufactured in China? So I think the honest answer is we don't know. I don't know whether to what extent it's true, but it is a real threat.
Well, I don't know if any of us want to pretend we're qualified for this question, but I see a lot of intergovernmental action. Governments spying on governments, governments spying on other companies on behalf of their government, governments engaging literally in cyber. Today in active cyber warfare, undeclared war in the cyber community that I'm saying it's going on between countries that are ostensibly at peace, countries that are ostensibly allies. Do we need to think about, the equivalent of a nuclear test ban treaty, a SALT II talks, where we start sitting down at a government level and try to work out at least some rules of behavior so that we minimize, we both come together governmentally and say let's look at the criminal terrorism side of this as a mutual threat we all maybe want to work on. Simultaneously, maybe we want to reduce this undeclared cyber war that's going on, and try to at least have some rules of behavior so that as we move forward, we're not opening up a can of worms that or a problem set that we can't possibly deal with. Anybody want to take the public policy side here?
Well, clearly, I will, because in 2004, I worked with a company called Symbiote Security, and we created a white paper that it instantly polarized the community, and people loved us and people hated us, and it was on rules of engagement for information warfare, right? So updated and called it cyber warfare, and basically,
can I get a copy of that? I'd love to see it.
It was Daniel Webster's necessity and proportionality and a bunch of other things that were in military warfare applied to the internet. And so we took and put risk scores on all actors on a network and said that, look, at some point, trust as a model is, do you trust me if I'm in the same room with you and we've just met and we're having a business meeting? Well, yeah, there's an implied amount of trust, right? But if I pick up a chair and I throw it through the window, all of a sudden your model of trust for me shifts instantly, right? But the government's thinking about it. That's why you have a U.S. Army Cyber Command, right? I mean, that's why the Air Force has a cyber, so obviously they're all thinking of it. But what's funny is I think in a lot of I go to the Beltway a lot, and I speak at like certain United Nations events and sub-panels and things like that. In March of last year, there was a New York Times article by Jody Westby on, hey, do we need rules for engagement for cyber warfare? A government, a treaty, exactly like you said. And just this year, I think USA Today or somebody, I can't remember offhand, also had articles kind of asking the same thing. Well, this is kind of what we asked in 2004, which was, why is this any different? You would be shocked if you knew how much stuff you could affect. You would be both shocked at how much stuff you can affect in a hospital or a critical infrastructure and how much stuff you can't, right? Because it's dramatized by TV and all of these things of terrorists and governments and people striking out. But the fact is, yeah, there should be some sort of treaty if that treaty can be enforced, because it is the internet and it is technology, which means that you can say block one attack that's done, and we can find 800 ways as a community of hackers to do the same result in 800 different ways. So it's like, does that break the treaty? Does it not? I mean, getting these people, China and North Korea and other places have had hacker schools for the military for years and years, and so have we. And so, again, this is something that's not new. It's been going on. We're just now bringing it up as an issue as some of us at a higher level of education on this topic become aware and concerned about these things. But there's hundreds of millions of people, billions of people around the world who have no clue at all how this could affect them or is affecting them, and how it will affect them in the future. But a cyber treaty, sure, it sounds like a great idea. You should take the lead on that and start it immediately. I bet no one will agree because it's the one version of warfare that they get away with every hour of every day that there is no consequence for. Because the governments, I think, see it much like the hackers did in the old days, the crackers rather, and that is that it's a victimless crime, right? They're gathering data, they're doing stuff. There's no damage. And in that white paper, we argued that until there was a financial damage on the other side that could be calculated. So we had countermeasures. So you were hacking in, it would find your computer and it would flash your firmware and turn your AS400 at the time into a toaster or whatever. That made it something that someone who was going to attack you next time had to think about. There was a consequence. I mean, right now, for the most part, it's a slap on the wrist from the judiciary perspective of a person in the U.S. all the way through, the international community. And that's, I mean, I think it's a great point that you're bringing up. I just don't think it's a realistic goal.
Sarath, you got a take on this? Or you're not worried about this one? No, I think we'll start. I think it's fine. Just we need to have some kind of consortium or agreement between, I think, different countries. But my larger concern is that enough, right? Because we don't know what goes on to a silicon wafer when it's being fabricated. You have a fab in China or anywhere in Southeast Asia. So there has to be some kind of verification mechanism or a collaboration or a treaty between countries. Go over and beyond countries. I would say from an enterprise and organization perspective to say, do we have the level of controls to make sure that our products coming on XYZ country is X level certified? Like you have the Energy Star certification or water certification, you want to call it. We do Intel fabricates in China, if I'm right, or Apple fabricates their motherboards in China. So end of the day, we don't know what's going on to that. Is there a way for us to collaborate between nations and enterprises and make sure that we come up with a standard so we can certify what is coming out of a country, what degree of, I would say, trust? Is something that I think would go a long way along with security education of the general mass to understand and adopt technology in a secure way going forward. I mean, otherwise the explosion of, more and more people are being trained to be developers, and we can have cheaper fabrication plans and, factories in China or anywhere in Asia, but if we are not able to create technology that is secure and trustworthy, then eventually it's going to create a chaotic environment where we would see more animosity between countries than partnership.
Great. Okay. On that high ground comment, thank you. We're coming to the close of our session. Before we go, we want to remind you this was just a warm up. Believe it or not, for our panel on top security threats at the IEEE Computer Society's Rock Stars of Cybersecurity. I love saying that. Last time we did, the first time we did one of the Rock Stars things, we actually got little plastic air guitars. It was cool. But that's coming up on the 24th of September. And don't forget, by sitting through this Hangout, you qualify for a 25% discount. We'll get that information to you. And finally, as a final tease, Hurley's going to give us a brief overview of what we can expect from the hackathon, which is September 19th and 20th in Austin. Go ahead, Will.
So we're going to be doing a hackathon with the IEEE Computer Society and the AT&T Developer Program. Essentially, it's going to be on wearables and Internet of Things. So there's a focus on wearables, but you can literally build anything you want. We'll have Arduinos, some ARM embed boards, a bunch of things for you to hack around off. We'll have presentations and code samples that you can use in building it. All you have to bring is your laptop and your skills and your ideas. You can put together a team. The hashtag for it is going to be #ATTHack. And it's a 2-day event. So about 6 p.m. on the first day, we're going to get together. There'll be networking. You can hang out with all of the fellow teammates and other teams. And then there'll be some presentations. You'll pitch your idea that you have. And then the next day, from 10 a.m. till about 6 p.m., you'll build it. And the best overall app's going to get $500, and the best use of an AT&T API will also get $500. But it's going to be great fun. I'll be there the whole time. The judging, everything's pretty straightforward. It's all available on the IEEE website at computer.org. If you go there, one of the boxes about halfway down, you can click and get your Eventbrite tickets, and you can also read all about it.
Very cool. Well, great. Thank you. I trust that sounds exciting to everyone as it does to the rest of us. That should be cool. So again, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on our what are the 10 scariest security threats we face. We didn't get through more than 4 or 5. There's plenty more to go. This is Josh Greenbaum, Will Hurley, Sarath, and the IEEE Computer Society. Thanks very much for joining us, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.